Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever it is for you. For me, it is just past midnight on Thursday, January 30th, 2025, which makes this the news for Wednesday, January 29th, day 1071 of Vladimir Putin's war of aggression against the people of Ukraine. How do you do? I'm Peter Alexievich, and this is the Live at 5, coming to you live from beautiful uptown Kyiv, this major European capital city currently under siege. I see the peeps are coming in. I want to thank Arn, who is the sponsor of tonight's live. If anybody sees Arn around, thank him, please. Hey, Sharon. Hey, Clay Fry. Hey, Paul Smith. How's everybody doing tonight? Hey, Fitzy. Yeah, we know, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's that insightful, sophisticated kind of response to the world that makes you such a popular fella. Hey, Rob Walker. Hey, Rocco. Hey, Bobby. How's everybody doing? Hey, Marla. Hey, G2. Hey, Freedom Doesn't Last. Hey, Big D. Richard Prexis is here. Michael Boucher is here. How's Anthony Tommy Tom doing tonight? How are we all doing? Hey, Sarah. Hey, Dawn Patrols. I know you do, pal. That's the beauty of it. That is the beauty of it. There's our sponsor of tonight's live. There's Arn. Everybody say thank you, Arn. Arn. I am a disaster. I'll tell you. I really am a disaster. There has hardly been any sleep this week. This morning, you might have seen the video I posted at 8 o'clock this morning when the air raid alarm sounded. And you know, I don't get to bed until 3, 4 in the morning by the time I render the live and get it up. And it has been that way all week with the drone attacks on Kyiv. We saw the antique car museum hit. I mean, because really, you know, that's what's going to win the war for the Russians, is taking out those Etzels and Model Ts. Ridiculousness. Okay. So last night, overnight, it was not a good night. It was not a good night in Ukraine. Despite the fact that the Russians only sent 57 drones. How many of them? 14 got through. That's very unusual. 75% interception rate. Not only that, the one Iskander missile that they sent got through, and that unalived 2 people. The drones caused damage to houses, infrastructure, especially port infrastructure in Ishmael. Now, Ishmael is a port just southwest of Odessa. It's a smaller port. It's a principal port for the low tonnage. I shouldn't say low tonnage, you know, because 10,000 tons is a lot of grain, right? But they've got big tonnage, deep ships that'll carry 100 tons of grain. So, anyway, a lot more, right? So the smaller barges and vessels that transit grain in and out of the Black Sea, they tend to dock in Ishmael. Nobody was injured, and none of the vessels that were docked in the port were hit. But port infrastructure was hit, and buildings were damaged. And that's where most of those 14 drones came in, right? And that makes sense because Odessa doesn't have the kind of layered air defense that Kyiv does. You send 14 drones at Kyiv, they all get shot down, almost all the time. But Odessa's a different story. And sea drones active in Crimea tonight, says Nightshade. I don't know anything about that, pal. Just like last night when somebody mentioned Nizhny Novgorod had been hit. I didn't know anything about that yet. It was literally happening while we were in the live. The first drones hit Nizhny at about 12:33 and local time, right? So right about halfway through the live, the fourth largest oil refinery in Russia gets hit and goes up like a bomb. It's amazing. So I think the big news tonight, and the place to really start, is to say that Oscar Jenkins is alive. For those who watch this channel, yes, Murmansk was hit, OTAN-bot, last night. Or at least air defenses were active and there were drones. I am unaware of any targets being hit. Now, of course, what's interesting about Murmansk being hit is that it's 2,000 kilometers. It's like 1,400 miles from Ukraine. So it's quite, every time that they hit Murmansk or Olyana Air Force Base up there, it's really something. It's quite an accomplishment. So just the fact that air defenses had to be activated in Murmansk is amazing. Hey, Truthful. And Nightshade, what is that? That's Crimea. That's, hey, T-Bar guy. Hey, Mad Mike. Okay, well, let's talk about Oscar Jenkins because people are really happy about this and with good reason. Thanks, Nightshade. I'll take a look. Oscar Jenkins is the 32-year-old volunteer serving with the 402nd, what was it? The 402nd Separate Rifle Battalion of the 66th Separate Mechanized Brigade. So he's a former teacher, former soldier who came and joined the Ukrainian army and was fighting out in Luhansk when he disappeared around the town of Mykolivka on December 16th, 2024. So just about 2 months ago, or a month and a half ago. He was taken prisoner, Australian national, but enlisted in the Ukrainian armed forces. We thought that they had executed him. The videotape of him, yeehaw, Truthful, the videotape of him being abused, certainly, by the Russians was out, and it ended in a way that led one to believe that he was unalived. Today, Penny Wong, which is just a great name, isn't it, for an Australian woman, Penny Wong? She's the foreign minister for Australia. She announced that she had evidence that Oscar was still alive and being held as a POW inside Russia. Hey, Joe. Hey, Bjorn. She also went on to say that the Australian government expresses the most deep concern for his health and well-being. She went on to say that to remind Russia that they are obligated under international law. Come on, Truthful, I'm trying to be serious, but you're right. Penny Wong is the best Bond girl name I've ever heard. You couldn't be more right, pal. Hey, Michael. But she did go on to remind the Russian government that they are obligated under international law and treaty, as well as the UN Charter and the Geneva Convention, to treat him well. Now, the Russians, for their part, they reported his health status as normal, whatever that means. I don't know. I don't know. And of course, I can't imagine a worse nightmare than being a prisoner of the Russians. I'd rather be executed, personally. And with the mouth on me, it probably wouldn't take them long to do it. I can't see us getting along for very long. So Oscar Jenkins is alive, and that is good news. That is good news. Now, last night, as I said, during the live, we had a major hit against the Luke Oil refinery in Nizhny Novgorod, Russia. Now, Luke Oil operates 4 large refineries inside Russia. They have now all been hit. This particular one is the fourth largest refinery in Russia and has a maximum refining capacity of 17 million tons, 130 million barrels of oil a year. That's about 5% of all of the refined crude oil that comes out of Russia every year. 5%. We don't know the status of the oil refinery because it's still on fire. We know that Ryazan is shuttered. That's another 5%. With Ryazan being offline, it is estimated that Russia's production capacity is reduced by somewhere between 15 and 22%. Add another 5% if the Lukoil facility hit last night is offline. Holy shit. You're talking about somewhere between 20 and 27%, almost a third of all refining capacity offline inside of Russia. It's huge. You're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue a day lost, not to mention the costs of repair. The lost productivity is going to hurt. The Ukrainian military intelligence confirmed that they had struck the facility with 4 drones and that all were reported to have hit their target. And the way that that place was burning last night, it lit up the skies of Russia like the skies of Mordor last night. One would think that they were right. The GUR said that they had caused significant damage. They are, Bertie, they are headed for bankruptcy. The facility is 760 kilometers from Ukraine, about 500 miles, and it is the 4th largest refinery in Russia. Now, the Russian governor of the region, Gleb Nikitin, confirmed that all drones were shot down, but some debris landed on the territory of the facility. I think that the Russians are successfully intercepting drones with their targets, it would appear to me, is how the Russians are successfully intercepting drones these days. Now, here's the thing. You think about what's been hit lately, right? You think about what's been hit in the last 3 weeks. Remember, we saw that $200 million radar hit, that cheese board, what they call a cheese board. It's part of the radar system of a Triumph air defense system. $200 million. An S-400, another $100 million. 2 S-300s, 1 OSA system, 1 Tor M3 air defense system, plus 5 Book M2s and 2 Pantsers. Oh, look, I'm telling lies. They only cost 20 grand. I'm sure you're right, Alex, and I'm wrong. Please continue to thrill us all with your acumen and your deep insight into the realities of financing for the Russian military. Yeah, it's over $1 billion in lost equipment in just the last 2 weeks. And think about the equipment that we're talking about. It's the eyes in the sky. Ukraine took a great big flaming stick and stuck it right in the eye of the Russian Cyclops, blinding them. And did they wait? Yes, and as you said, Big Hawk, a stick into the eye of Mordor. Did they wait to see what would happen next? No, they created a huge dilemma for Russia by launching the biggest drone strikes on internal infrastructure critical to the successful prosecution of this war. And we've seen Russia on fire since. 4 oil depots, 3 refineries, the microelectronics plant at Kremenny. Now look at, think about this with me, right? Think about that microelectronics plant. Think about the refineries. You cannot run a war without diesel. You got to put diesel in the tanks and in the armored vehicles. They don't have the diesel. We've seen 36 oil depots burn, over 1 million tons of diesel go up in smoke, and 1 million tons of aviation fuel go up in smoke. Your planes can't fly bombing sorties if they don't have aviation fuel. Your tanks can't move without diesel. And your air defense systems, you can't rebuild them without the guts and the brains, the electronic components that used to be made at Khamenei. Russia has a dilemma. Not only has Ukraine blinded the air defense so that the internal infrastructure is up for grabs, Ukraine can reach out and hit any target it wants in Russia. They've demonstrated that all the way to Murmansk, baby. Now Russia's in a dilemma. Do they protect the vital infrastructure inside the country? Or do they pull the air defense units that are scattered across the country back to the front to replace what they lost at the front and protect the front? I'll tell you something, I will never be as thin as Russia's air defense is right now. That is not a world that we are ever going to live in. Hey, Richard Chapman. So, what we're seeing here, really, is a macrocosm of the microcosm that we saw in the video of that Leopard 2 tank taking out that armored column of 6 vehicles. Remember, we talked last night about the video that emerged of a Leopard 2 taking out a whole column of 6 or 7 vehicles. Now, at the time, I didn't think they were armored. I thought most of them were soft targets. This is a correction. I was wrong. It was all armored vehicles. I heard a great analysis by Hamish Gordon on this attack, and I learned a lot from it that I would like to share with you. So Hamish Gordon is a former tank commander with the British Royal Services, and he was on Ukraine the Latest podcast today talking about the video of the Leopard 2 taking out the armored column. And this is what he had to say on this subject. That one tank demonstrated the capabilities, the maneuverability, the offensive capabilities, the maneuverability, and the protective armor of Western weapons that Russian weapons simply do not have. Further, he went on to say that the responses of the Leopard tank crew versus the responses of the Russian crews demonstrated a clear lack of training and situational awareness for the armored column of Russians, and a high level of training and execution capability on the behalf of the Ukrainians. This is what he said. The armored column was coming down the road. They were evenly spaced. They were on a road. They were not maneuvering. Now, of course, we've talked about the fact that it's ridiculously warm here. It's the end of January. It's the coldest month of the year. And it was 48 degrees in Kyiv today. What is that, like 8 or 9 Celsius, right? Something like that. And that has resulted. The ground in Kursk is not frozen. The snow has all melted. You can't run these heavy vehicles through the mud. They just get stuck. There's 1,000 videos online right now of armored vehicles and tanks stuck in the mud in Ukraine and in Russia, in Kursk. Most of them are Russian. He talked about the Leopard 2 tank and what it was doing. What it was doing was what they call jockeying. Now, get this, right, because this is really interesting. Jockeying is the process of moving between shots so that the enemy cannot acquire the target. And apparently the Ukrainians were executing these maneuvers just the way that they teach it at the Royal British Academy, or whatever it is, military academy. The whole idea, he said, is to inflate from a deflating position. Now, I don't know what any of that means, but he went on to say that basically what it means is every time you move, you want to move into a position to hit the armored vehicle from its side. You want to shoot it in the side. Another way to say this is that the Ukrainians demonstrated exemplary training and execution. He said they behaved precisely the way that a British unit would in the same circumstances. And I thought that all of that was very, very interesting. He went on to describe the way that tank warfare works. You take a layered approach, like an onion, right? Or a parfait, if you prefer. That is to say that if you can stay where the enemy isn't, that's the thing to do. Don't be there. If you have to be there, make sure you are not seen. If you are seen, try to make sure you're not acquired as a target. If you're acquired as a target, try not to get hit. And if you get hit, try to make sure that it hits you where it can't penetrate the armor. That approach, he said, he could see in the execution on that video. And this is a guy who is not easily impressed. He was very impressed by the execution on the part of the Ukrainians. And I thought that was a very interesting conversation to hear it from the horse's mouth himself. Take a listen to today's latest podcast from Ukraine, from the Telegraph, the London Telegraph. Now, one of the things that we learned about last night's drone attack on Ukraine was that the Russians are really evil. They're just evil. They have outfitted the Shaheds now with fragmentation explosives. So now you don't just have a unitary warhead that smashes into a building and explodes. When it explodes, it sends shrapnel in every direction. Tungsten balls, heavy metal balls, flying at near the speed of sound, rip right through flesh. Like pins and needles, nails, slivers of metal that will tear a man apart. Really, really an obscene use of this technology. I mean, not that it all isn't. It is all obscene. It really is. So the Russians sent their first delegation to the new leadership in Syria today. Deputy Foreign Minister Mikhail Bogdanov led the group along with Russian Presidential Special Envoy Alexander Laurentinev. The purpose was undisclosed. After the meeting, we learned what was going on. The Russians were there trying to get their bases back, while the Syrians were telling the Russians what they wanted from them, which is reparations and Assad's head on a plate. That's what they want. They want Assad back in Syria to face justice. So we think that Assad managed to smuggle out of the country to Russia about $135 billion. That's $135 billion with a B. Now, that money right there could be returned to Syria, and it wouldn't have to come out of Putin's pocket, and that might satisfy them. Or Putin's more likely maybe to try to negotiate some percentage of that. As to whether or not he'll give up Assad is anybody's guess. But depending on what he's going to get in return, we might just see Assad stand trial. We might just see Assad in the dock. Wouldn't that be great? That would really be something for me. The EU is planning a phased ban on Russian aluminum. So the EU currently buys about 8% of its aluminum from the Russians. Over the next 18 months, they plan on phasing that down from 275,000 metric tons a year to about nothing, is what it looks like. Further sanctions include about 150 more Russian banks being removed from the SWIFT system, along with 70 more Shadow Fleet vehicles being sanctioned. No, we don't, Sharon. No, we absolutely do not. You guys handle it. This one I'll take care of. Give me a minute. Okay. Now that we're suffering a little fog of war here, we don't really know what's going on. Deep State map does not confirm this. The ISW does not confirm this. But the Moscow Times is reporting today that Chasiv Yar has fallen to the Russians. That after months and months of pushing, of trying to get across the canal, countless tens of thousands of lives lost, the Russians have finally crossed and taken the vast majority of Chasiv Yar. It has essentially fallen. Now, again, this is something to watch over the next 24 hours, because if the Moscow Times is right, then that information is going to come out from other sources over the next 24 hours. If they're wrong, other sources will contradict it, and we'll still be up in the air trying to peer through this fog of war. Putin today said that our boy Zelensky is an illegitimate leader, and so he cannot be part of any peace talks. He can't sign anything. He cannot be part of the peace talks. Now, this has been an ongoing problem, right? Putin's whole shtick, what he sold the Russian people on, is that Zelensky and his crew are Yahtzees, and that the purpose of the special military operation is to de-Yahtsify Ukraine. All reasonable people know that this is nonsense. All reasonable people know that this is nonsense. But the Russian people don't. Exactly, Cyberdoc. Zelensky was elected. Unlike Putin, who has simply clung to power, right, like Gollum with the One Ring for 25 years. And anybody who got in his way has been dispatched, detained, or disappeared. Just that simple. So Putin does not want peace. And I think that that's clear. When you don't acknowledge that your adversary is legitimate and you refuse to deal with them, when your entire economy hinges on the production of war materiel and the further expansion of the war rather than its end, you have a regime that does not want peace. So Trump said, what did he say? First, when he was on the campaign trail, he said he would stop the war before he even got in office. Remember that? Then he said that he would stop it within 24 hours of taking office. Remember that? Then he said within 100, or he didn't say it, but Kellogg said he thought that they could get it done in 100 days. And then other members of the Trump team are now saying, we think 6 months is a reasonable time. Bullshit. First of all, I'm unconvinced that there will still be a Russia in 6 months. At the rate that things are going, it's not looking good at all. The economy at this juncture is so fragile. There's a 200,000 person deficit in Agriculture. In the agricultural industry, Russia grows a lot of food and they sell a lot of food to the world. Hey, Wanpa. And they sell a lot of food to the world. You're down 200,000 people in the industry because they've gone to the front or they've gone into the defense sector or they're migrants who are afraid to come into the country because they don't want to get shanghaied and sent to Ukraine. And who can blame them, right? So, it's entirely possible that at the next harvest, Russia won't be able to feed itself. Last year, we saw record losses, record low harvests inside of Russia. Russia wasn't selling as much of its own grain on the open market last year as much as it was selling the grain it stole from Ukraine. That's where it got the grain to sell last year. We all know Russia's in trouble when they have to run to North Korea. You are right, Anthony. I could not agree more. They're in trouble. Sovereign wealth fund is down to $34 billion from a high of 97 billion in liquid assets. At the current rate of depletion, it'll be worth almost nothing by August. So let's say 8 months. Let's say the Russian economy can hang on for 8 months. One black swan flies in over the horizon. It'll shatter the whole thing. The dominoes will fall, especially if Ukraine keeps hitting the capacity of their main product. You're talking about billions of dollars in lost revenue. F and hell, that's a great point. Where are they going to get the diesel? Planting season is coming up, right? We're about 90 days out for the Russians of the first time that they can till the soil and plant the early crops. We're about 90 days out from that. And they're sending all the diesel to Ukraine? It's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem. Remember last year, Russian farmers drove their tractors into cities protesting the availability and price of diesel. This year is going to be much worse, much worse. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard any of this, but there are rumors, and these rumors continue to swirl, of coming bank asset freezes. Now, what that means is if you have $10,000 in the bank and you go to take it out, you can't get at your own money. They've taken your money. And instead, you get coupons, shares in the bank that you may cash in sometime in the next few years, a date to be determined. It's an IOU for $10,000. Your $10,000 is gone to support Russia's war, and you have an IOU for $10,000 that is essentially worthless unless Russia wins that war. This is eroding consumer confidence in the banking system in ways that we have not seen inside of Russia in 30 years, not since the fall of the Soviet Union. I don't think that's a coincidence, right? Because Russia is going down the exact same, it's like they learned nothing. They learned nothing from the fall of the Soviet Union, and they are repeating the exact same process. It's insanity. It's insanity. Projected income from oil and gas revenues is extremely uncertain right now because OPEC Plus meets next week and Trump is pushing for them to increase production. Now look, Trump is full of shit because the Saudis already said that they were going to increase production. They said by 1 million barrels a day. They said this back in October, and production is already ramping up in Saudi Arabia. So we're going to see, even if we lose, right? Russia puts a couple million barrels, I think they produce 11 million barrels of crude oil a day. 11 million barrels of crude oil a day. And they export to India and China alone about 2 million barrels a day. That business is all stopping, which means that oil will be available for the market at the price cap. They've been getting around sanctions. They've been getting around the price cap. But if nobody will buy it over the price cap because of fear of U.S. secondary sanctions, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem. All right, that's it for me. That's everything I got today. All right, let's deal with the trolls or whatever's going on. No, you guys know I used to have the best moderator team on the Tickety Talk, but unfortunately we have had a falling out. And I don't know if Jay is here tonight. Jay, I think Jay and Travis are the only moderators I have left. And I don't know that I want moderators anymore. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to deal with trolls in the comments. It was just the one, says Chef Deb. Good. It's a great question, Victor. Why would they ramp up that will only lower the price of oil, which would go against Saudi Arabian interests? Suppose, Victor, that the world has convinced Saudi Arabia that it is important to break the back of Russia and isolate Russia and not buy Russian oil. So if we're going to take 2 to 5 million barrels a day of oil from Russia and no longer sell it in the market, the price of the opportunity to sell that oil above the price cap, say at $70 a barrel, goes to the Saudi Arabians. They will make up the difference. So they'll keep oil at $70 a barrel, only they'll be selling 1 million more barrels a day. It could be something like that. What that would mean, because basically you and I both know, Mohammed bin Salman has been with the Russians all the way. Their production cuts over the last 18 months have been an implicit way of supporting the Russian war effort by keeping the price of oil high, keeping money flowing into Putin's pocket. If the Saudis can be convinced that there is a way to drive that money into their pockets and pick Putin's pocket, I think that could be why. Now, I don't pretend to know, and I don't pretend to know the mind of Mohammed bin Salman. I only know that they announced in October that they would be raising production levels. So I would be very surprised if after next week's OPEC Plus meeting, we hear that they are not going to. That would be a change as far as I can tell. Yeah, Bobby, we don't know what else Trump might have promised them to sweeten the pot. That's another thing. Money's important. There's no doubt about it, Victor. You're not wrong. But if Trump has a way, or if the Americans have a way to make up that difference with the Saudis at the expense of Russia, that's a win-win, right? I don't think the Saudis are going to be particularly loyal to Putin. I don't think they need to be. Yeah, if we put tariffs on Canadian oil, oh, well, the problem with that, bro dog, I mean, the reason that the Canadians sell us so much oil and sell it to us so cheap is because of where they're located. It all comes from pipelines right into the Midwest. They don't have an easy way to get their oil to ships. They don't have a single LNG terminal right for natural gas. That's a problem too for them. They don't have the infrastructure to get it to the rest of the world. That's why they sell it, so much of it, to us so cheap. Saudis need America for defense. That's a good leverage point, F and L. Hey, there's James Boudreau. James, I don't know if you were in here last week, but you were our sponsor all last week. And I want to thank you for your ongoing support. And I want to thank again our sponsor for tonight, Arn. I do want to thank, if Jay or Travis are here, I want to thank them for ongoing moderation. No, thank you, pal. And I want to thank Nightshade for the Peter's Peeps group on the Book of Faces. And I want to thank Lars for the Discord server. Thank you. Are those pork chops? I don't know what they're supposed to be. So thank you, anonymous user, for your kind words. It's all logistics, says James, your transport driver, and he is right. Just think what the most recent round of sanctions did to the transport cost of the shadow fleet. It raised the price by $3 to $5 a barrel. That's crazy. A small tanker carries 500,000 barrels of oil. That means that the price of your order just went up $1.5 to $2.5 million because of the sanctions. Pork chops and applesauce. The sanctioned fleet, or the shadow fleet rather, at least 143 of the ships, when the sanctions were announced, stopped dead in the water and have not moved since. They're waiting for a change of flags. They're waiting for a name change, waiting to be re-registered so that they can be hidden, right? Like all this crap. That all costs money and time. And it's harder and harder to get it done. Fewer and fewer countries are participating. We saw Panama and Barbados revoke their flags of convenience from the shadow fleet last week. Hey, Clay. Good night, Nightshade. Things aren't going well for Russia or the Russians. They really are like a bunch of lemmings just following this genocidal lunatic in the Kremlin right over a cliff. And I hate to say it, but we're seeing the same exact thing in the United States with Donald Trump. I feel like Ukraine has become the new America, or is in the process of becoming the new America, showing the world what it is to fight for liberty and freedom and to not take it for granted. While the United States has just given up. We're so fat and bored and spoiled, we just don't give a shit. F&L did some math. He says that at this rate, mid-March, 900,000 casualties. I'm with you, pork chop. Right, Arn? It's ridiculous. And these oligarchs, they don't understand that the system that they are destroying is the system that made them so wealthy. That America is the greatest engine for generating wealth that the world has ever seen. But it's because of everything else we do. It's insanity. It's insanity. And I don't get it. I don't understand it. And you know, when you listen to like my favorite American billionaires, like Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they get it. They understand it. They are not these tech bro billionaires who are out to just rip it all down. Hey, Mrs. Toad. Not that I know of, bro dog. That investigation is still ongoing. The investigations into the cables cut in the Baltic Sea, as far as I know, are still ongoing. So mass confusion has a really interesting question. Hey, sweet, is that Sweden? I'm so bad. I'm sorry. I'm an American. We're so dumb about flags of the world. Or is that Finland? Oh, I shouldn't even have said that out loud, should I? Sorry, Han Leo. I don't know what that flag is. So mass confusion says, is it accurate to say that World War III began when Russia invaded Crimea? And that's going to be for historians to decide. I usually say that it was February 22nd, 2022, or 24th, 2022, the full-scale invasion, that was really the beginning. You know, like you think about Hitler's annexation of the Sudetenland. That was a precursor to World War II, right? It wasn't until he went into Czechoslovakia and Poland, right? When was that, 39, 38, 39? I feel like that's where we're at. We're at the 38, 39 point where Germany's gone into Czechoslovakia and Poland, and Ukraine is Czechoslovakia. And I would argue that that's the beginning right there. Oh, Sweden's yellow and blue. Okay, that's Finland. Thank you, Mike Berry. God, I'm glad Tony Takiri's not here to hear me make that mistake. James, we're Americans. We should not make these guesses. We should just ask. Thanks, be nice. Hey, Clay. Oh, that's Wales, John. That's Wales. I know that one. Dragna. I mean, that's a dragna, but Dragna is a handle for a follower, and I recognize that flag. September 39 for Poland. Thank you, Norway. And we're all turning our back on it. I mean, I'm not. I think if you're a person that's in this live, you're not. It's hard to know what to do at such a time. It's very hard to know what to do at such a time, especially if you're under pressure from an administration that's taken away your health care, taken away your child care, taken away your food stamps, right? Because you're the burden on society rather than you are the society. Do you think Ukraine will lower the recruitment age to 18 soon? I do not, Clay. I don't. And it is frustrating to me to hear that America is pressuring them to do that. Just because we are so willing to sacrifice our sons doesn't mean that we should encourage other people to do it. Until things are bad, remember the human brain is still developing until the age of 26. You don't have a fully formed frontal cortex until you're 26 years old. You want your population to be mature first, in my opinion. In my opinion. Bobby, you are a hoot. I haven't seen the word dirigible since I read Harry Potter and the Goblet of, or no, it wasn't Goblet of Fire. It was Half-Blood Prince. Half-Blood Prince? No, Deathly Hallows. I haven't heard the word dirigible since the last time I watched Deathly Hallows. Sue to deficit? I don't know what that means, Avis. Can submarines play a role to secure cables in the sea? I don't know the answer to that. One would think so. Bobby, if you stop developing, you're dead, pal. So keep developing, right? right? Stopping is going backward. Greenland isn't for sale. It's just ridiculous to even talk about it. Swedish Navy did recover the Eagle S anchor and delivered it to the Finns. Yes, they did. Yeah, right. Who wants to join the United States and lose their health care? Who wants that? Nobody. Give me a break. I mean, the whole Ukrainian army is made up of middle-aged men. The average age, if I'm not mistaken, is 42. Tech bros lost 1.2 trillion yesterday. Fuck them. You are right, Jackie. You are absolutely right. But that should not be our motivation. I mean, it's a factor. I'm not saying that, future economic prosperity shouldn't be a factor. But the defense of our principles, our literal way of life, should be our principal motivation, right? And that was the big motivator for me to come here, not to help Ukraine, but to learn from Ukraine about our common enemy, because I think Ukraine understands the Russians in ways that Americans never could, and why we get Russia wrong. And so I'm here trying to learn about our enemy, who they are, what their weaknesses are, and how we can defeat them. Because right now they're winning. Donald Trump, you're not wrong, Jay, but Donald Trump would not be possible without Russia. Donald Trump is Putin's Frankenstein's monster. Donald Trump is Putin's creation. And the way that things are going right now, it's going to play out just like Frankenstein did. The monster destroys his creator. And then it's going to be torches and pitchfork time, baby. Sharpen those pitchforks, light those torches. Clay, that's a great question. What will it look like when Russia runs out of money on the battlefront? I mean, their guys are already having their paychecks stolen by the commanders, or they're, forcing them to turn the money over to avoid going on suicide raids. It's all one great big Ponzi scheme. Eventually, one can imagine commanders who have looted diamonds out of shops and packed their suitcases full of the cash of their men just disappearing from the battlefield or being fragged by their... We could see another 1917 where 2 million Russians just walked off the battlefield and gave up on the Tsar, opening the way for communism. Monster Trump devours the monster Putin. That sounds like a movie plot. You're not wrong. Okay, you can go. Lemur Kitty, no, Trump did not stop funding Ukraine. He stopped all foreign aid assistance. So every foreign aid assistance program was stopped. Except, now get this, the exceptions mentioned in the executive order were food programs to Egypt and Israel. That was supposed to be the only exception. But the very next day, the Americans and the Ukrainians confirmed that order would not affect military aid to Ukraine in the pipeline, but it would affect humanitarian aid to Ukraine. Then Marco Rubio came out and said, look, no. If you're a food program and people will starve if we don't give them the food, you can keep working. If you're a health program and people will die if we don't give you the money, you can keep working. And he gave all these exceptions, but he didn't say which programs. And so now all the guys that do the programs are confused as to whether or not their programs are affected by the executive order or not. And on top of that, a judge has now put an injunction against that executive order to determine whether or not it was even legal to do. All of that highlights the sheer incompetence of this administration and its gang of ghouls and goblins intent on the destruction of the United States for their own unenlightened short-term self-interest. And I don't know when the American people are going to take to the fucking streets and say enough is enough. It's just a DOJ policy that a sitting president doesn't get prosecuted for crimes. It's not in the Constitution. Not in the Constitution. It's just a policy of the Department of Justice. There is no reason that the Department of Justice cannot prosecute a sitting president, and he should be fucking prosecuted. Fuck, he's already been prosecuted. The sentence has been passed. He should just be in fucking jail. Okay, I think we're just about out of time. So I want to thank again Arn, our sponsor of tonight's live. Thank you, Arn, so much. I want to thank Nightshade, who has the Peters Peeps group, Lars, who has the Discord server, and I don't know if any of the mods were here or not. Yeah, anyway, Joey the Lips, hey, pal. So Charlie wants to know, since I've been in Ukraine, have I known any Ukrainians to come back? The answer to that is yes. Quite a number. Now, admittedly, it's mostly women. It's probably 70% of the people that I've met that have come back to Ukraine. It's probably 70% women, 30% men. And if there is anybody out there, Ukraine needs you. Please come home. Your industry is needed. Your brains are needed. Your back is needed. You are needed here. And if you don't come home now, you will not have any part in the victory. You will forever be sidelined and left out. If you want to have a part in this victory, come home now. Please. Pretty please. Pretty please with sugar on top. Come home. Hey, Dan Ballard. How you doing, pal? Thanks, Bro Dog. Thanks, Lemur Kitty. No, we do not promote that organization here. No. Please don't do that again. We do not promote World Aid Runners here. No. Absolutely not. I don't even think they're functioning. Right? Isn't he back in the United States now? Yeah, do not give them money. Do not give them money. If you want to give money to Ukraine, give money to United 24. Give money to United 24. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Make it a great day.